This video is really for anyone who wants to find out how to get a job in film. You might be in film school still and you're thinking about the future. Maybe you've just graduated, maybe you'd graduated quite a long time ago, or maybe you've never even been to film school. But if you feel ready to start looking and figuring out how exactly to get a job in film, this is the place. Now, I'm going to be talking about the Scottish film scene, but rest assured there's a lot of different places out there with a similar industry that will probably find this helpful. Personally, when I finished film school over a decade ago, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I had these vague ideas of how to go and get a job, but a lot of the advice out there was aimed at people who live in cities that have a structured film industry. And I didn't then, and I still don't now. So this is all about how to actually find a job if you're not living in London or LA. I did a lot of things along the way in order to boost my career, including working on short films, crowdfunding, learning more skills, taking on jobs adjacent to film, and basically just exploring all options in order to get there. So I'm going to talk about what I would recommend doing and what kind of things I learned along the way. You may already know exactly what you want to do in film, or you might be interested in more than one thing, and either way, you should be picking a lane right now. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to commit to that for the rest of your life. It just means that for the moment, you're going to focus on this. The reason this is really important is because when you have too many interests, people don't know what to do with you. And this was one of my problems when I first graduated. I was interested in editing, but I was also interested in directing, and I never fully committed to one because I was worried that I would lose an opportunity in the other. And the reality is that if you're interested in a lot of areas, that's okay, but it means that people don't know where to recommend you to. And if I had just said, I love editing, I think that's what I want to do, people could then go, it would be really good for you to do some assistant editing, or to work in a machine room, or to go over to the edit suite and say hi to the editors. So honestly, the simplest thing you can do straight off the bat is pick an area. Now, I was interested in both editing and directing. Eventually, I let go of directing because honestly, I found it a bit stressful. And we're going to explore this a lot more later. But basically, when I came out of film school, I wasn't ready to direct. I did not have the life experience, and I also didn't have the skills to command a team of people. But I did have skills in editing. People had always told me I was really good at it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then finally, when I decided that I was going to throw myself into that and start telling people, I like editing, this is what I do, I got so many more opportunities. And off the back of editing, I learned so much more about directors and what they do and how they work with teams. And that helped me when I finally did come to direct. And I feel like if I had committed to editing much sooner, I may have got where I wanted to be a bit earlier. As I just said, a lot of the UK industry operates on referral. So usually you have to start out just working in any position, runner, researcher, whatever you can do, and then you start to talk to people about what you're interested in, and people will recommend you into departments. There are other ways of finding jobs, and we'll come back to that, but this is your biggest asset. You've got to be able to network, and you've got to be able to talk about yourself well. So my second piece of advice is all around connections and how to make them. So I also didn't appreciate that the people I had gone to film school with were people that I should be keeping in touch with. I graduated in 2013, and I'm not sure if it was a big influence from the financial crash 5 years previous, or if it was just the university that I went to and the class that I was part of. It wasn't as well established as others are. It has a much better reputation now, but at the time, not many people from my class went on to actually work in film. There's a perception about film that it's not a serious thing to go and study. And I could make a whole other video about whether film school is worth it or not and what you should be getting out of it. But if you do take something from it, make that connections. I think I always knew who in the class was serious about going into the screen industry and who was just doing this course because it was easy to access, and you get to go to uni for 4 years and have a bursary and free council tax and all that kind of stuff. When I was at uni, I wasn't the most confident. I was quite shy. And when I left uni, I definitely didn't keep in touch with a lot of people, even though some of them were going on to do bigger things. And the reality is that, again, because things are based on referral, it's a really good idea to keep in touch with people and keep those friends that you had, the people that you shared a common experience with, that you may even have made some shorts with before. And then when they get an opportunity, they're thinking of you and bringing you on board as well. When you get an opportunity, you think of them and you bring them along. That is largely how it works. And so the more friends you have right at the start, the better. So further to that, you have to get yourself out there and look for new connections. Again, I was far too shy to realise this when I graduated, but basically I should have taken the opportunity to go along to more filmmaking events, more film festivals, things like writers' groups, and just even have the curiosity to pop along and see what it's like. I felt so intimidated whenever I went to things. I would often go with a friend or somebody who didn't work in the screen industry and then just mostly talk to them the whole time, and that's terrible practice. You need to get out of your comfort zone if you are scared of networking and just go along and speak to people about yourself. Speak to people about themselves. Ask what they're working on, what has brought them along to this event. The truth about networking is that it's awkward and everyone knows that it's awkward, and it always is. You don't magically grow out of the awkwardness, you just get more used to it, and that's fine. But honestly, you should just embrace that. Let's all acknowledge it for what it is. We're kind of using each other, and that's okay. It is the whole point. Everyone has shown up to do that. So get along to film festivals, networking events, and filmmaking meetups, and just speak to people. Tell them about your ideas and your skills, ask them about their ideas and skills, and see where that takes you. So you've picked a lane and you've made some connections. How do you actually get a job? A lot of the advice out there when I graduated was just write to a production company and I'm sure they'll have something for you to do. But it is far more competitive than that. Now, I did write to lots of production companies, and some of them got back and were very generous and gave me work experience, and this was crucial. Because what you can do is meet as many people at that company as possible, talk to them about your goals, be as helpful as possible, and then hopefully they will employ you in the future. Or the people that you meet in that space will go, oh, I know somebody who needs an edit assistant or who has a machine room and they could use people like you. So it's really, really important that you use those opportunities, not just to get skills and get your foot in that door of the company, but to network and talk to the people there as well. It's difficult because a lot of these experiences are unpaid and there's only so much time that you can commit to volunteering. But even if you can only afford to do a day, a lot of these companies were quite happy to have someone along on a set or to have someone in the office for a day. It meant that they got an extra set of hands for free on their production, and for you it is an opportunity to just absorb as much as you can and tell as many people as you can about yourself. Of course, in an appropriate way. Please don't be tapping anyone in the shoulder whilst they're mid-job to tell them that you would really like to be an editor one day. But you can have these conversations at lunch or whenever you're standing around with other people in the crew and you've got some time to chat. So moving away from writing to production companies and hoping that they get back, the place to look for film jobs in the UK is Facebook. Which is insane because Facebook in every other walk of life is this crazy boomer-ass platform. But in the film industry, it is literally a job board. There are a lot of times where I've realised that the only reason I still have Facebook is so that I can find film jobs. Look up film and then your area. So if that's Glasgow, if that's Birmingham, if that's Manchester, it could be film in Scotland, it could be film in the West Midlands. Wherever you are, wherever you can get yourself. Look for film or TV and a location and you will find so many groups. Usually there are rules to join the groups, but they're nothing crazy. They just want to make sure that people are going to be posting legitimate jobs and that they're not going to be abusing the wide pool of people to sell something else. But basically in these places, anytime there is a gap to fill, people will throw up a post and there will be loads of responses to it immediately. And then that day, they will pick a person to come onto their production. It's that quick, so you've really got to be responsive. It's probably a good idea to have notifications on, but you will get flooded with them. I will say that this last year, people have noted that the Facebook groups have been quieter, but it has started picking up again, I've noticed. And that is because 2023-2024 was a particularly slow year for film jobs. But now that they're coming back around, that's where they are. Production companies also list job postings quite often on their own websites, so you could have a look at specific ones that are near you. You can also send your CV over and ask them to keep it on file. The thing about this at the moment is because of GDPR, which is like a European law where you cannot store data in an unsafe way, you have to let employers know that they can store and keep your CV. So that usually is something that I'll just write in the footer of my CV when I send it in. So honestly, the two biggest ways that you can find film jobs in the UK are Facebook and knowing people. So what if you just need to have a job? What if you cannot afford to do bits of jobs here and there and keep yourself going? I was in that position when I left uni. I lived in a small village in the middle of nowhere, which my family absolutely adore, to the extent that literally all of them live there. And it's a lovely little place, but it wasn't great for opportunity for me. The nearest town didn't have any film jobs, and the nearest city was over an hour away. For the first year, I commuted into the city to do runner jobs, and then eventually I moved to the city. Now, I managed to get a really cheap flat, and I also shared it, so my bills were halved. And certainly for the first couple of years, I lived quite frugally. That's something I've done a lot of times in my life. It is kind of what you sign up for when you decide to go into a career in the screen industry. I had a handful of jobs those first couple of years in Glasgow. I decided to take opportunities that paid less than minimum wage, but would be really great if they worked out. So I edited a documentary for a director that he was taking to Al Jazeera TV. And I spent a good few months working for £30 a day. And we made a great documentary, but sadly it didn't get picked up by the network. So that was a choice I made because I thought, well, if I edit an actual TV show, that's going to be huge for my CV. The wage was so low that I basically couldn't eat properly. But these were decisions that I was making in order to make things happen. Eventually, though, after doing that on a few different things, I did run out of steam. Much like my light has just ran out of power. That took a really long time to fix. I was saying that I ran out of steam, and effectively after a couple of years living not even paycheck to paycheck, but just scrap of money to scrap of money, I just really couldn't do that life anymore. And I think it was especially because at that point in time, I was approaching my mid-20s, and to me, that was getting old. And a lot of my friends were moving into industries where they had a consistent job. I think for a lot of other industries, you can go to uni, get a degree, and then come out into a thriving workforce where you will just find something, or it seemed that way to me. And I was coming out into a workforce that just didn't have much, really. And there was no permanency. This is the other thing. So I decided to get a day job. And the idea here was that I would do some shifts part-time, and then that would give me enough income to live, and I would use the rest of my time to continue pursuing the film career. Easier said than done, because the reality of shift work and working in industries like retail or hospitality is that they really need staff. And so they were giving me so many shifts. I was basically doing a full-time job. It was working in a cinema, and the shift patterns there are quite irregular. So sometimes I would be doing 12 in the afternoon to 12 at night, or starting at 4 p.m, working till 2 in the morning. But what I did do was I decided to make a film in the time that I had around those shifts. So if I was doing a 4 p.m. start, then I would go out and film in the morning and afternoon. And if I was doing a 9 to 5, which was super rare, then I would have my evening to come home and edit. And I did this for a good few months, and I made my first short film after I graduated. I called it Alone because I made it completely alone. And it was about a woman who wakes up alone and has to find herself. And it was very liberating because I didn't have a crew, so I could just go out and do some filming whenever I wanted to. But it was also limiting in that it was very difficult to hit record and then run into the frame and act out what I needed to do and then come back over and watch the footage to see if it was good and realise that someone had walked through the shot or it wasn't what I was looking for and have to go and do it again. And I'm realising that this is kind of what I do now with my YouTube channel. Well, I've made that a lot easier on myself. I'm filming indoors. It was something I had to really chip away at, and making that short made me feel still very connected to the film industry, even when I was working in a cinema day to day. And I guess working at the cinema made me feel connected to the film industry because I got access to movies and because there was a part of it where I got to see behind the scenes of distribution. And I'll talk more about that soon. But what I want to say about having a day job is that it really can get in the way. Of course it does. I would even consider my day job now as getting in the way of my true dreams, and I am an editor full time. But even if you can only dedicate one night a week, or you've only got your lunch break to work on something, take that opportunity, do it, because you never know what you might be able to create out of those little pockets of time that if you think it's not worth it, 10 weeks from now, you could have had something. You could have had a script, you could have had a new short film. So you may as well try and see what happens. So this is the part where I talk about how my day job did in ways help me to achieve my main goals. When I was working at the cinema, I was offered to go through training to become a manager. And at the time, I was making minimum wage. And if I became a manager, I would have something like an extra £3 an hour. And that was literally the main motivator. I was like, yes, I would like more money for being here. And what happened was I ended up becoming a manager for about 2 years. And then I went onto a project where I travelled around the UK training other people on how to manage cinemas. And I did that for about a year and a half. I learned how to manage a team of people. I learned how to problem solve. I learned how to schedule. I learned how to manage stock. I learned how to liaise with people, and I learned so many people skills from that experience. Then when I was a coach and travelled up and down the UK, I got out of my comfort zone. I saw what the rest of the UK was like, and I know this is going to sound really silly. As well as travelling to London, I travelled to places like Slough and Hull and Wrexham. Really normal places, you know. Yes, there was some glamorous Newcastles and there was some glamorous Liverpools, but there was also Dundee and what was the name of that one place that was like so boring? Huddersfield. Sorry, everyone from Huddersfield. But the reason that that was interesting was because it did get you out and about in places and learning about people from all walks of life. It was fuel for, again, people skills and then also inspiration. Some people use their day job to draw inspiration and write characters, to fill a script full of real life people. And if anything, going around the UK and doing this training definitely put me in front of loads of different personality types. So when I did that job, I also got the opportunity to go to London and work at their Leicester Square flagship cinema because they renovated it from being a normal premiere cinema to being a luxury premiere cinema. And I was part of the team that trained people in how to operate a luxury cinema. My first ever premiere experience was the Alita Battle Angel premiere in 2019. And going along to something like that and learning how it all functioned. And just what the atmosphere was like, the vibes of a premiere, was super fascinating. I got to meet James Cameron, and I also managed to get his email address. I have emailed him, but he hasn't replied. But basically, what I wanted to say in this section was that even if you are sucked into your day job a bit more and the responsibility of life starts bearing down upon you, and you think to yourself, I should go for this manager job because nothing's happening in film and I need to get paid more in order to enjoy my life, there are still opportunities to take from that. You can learn people skills, you can learn about the world, and then you can return to filmmaking stronger than you were before. So I just want to touch on life experience one final time. As I mentioned before, when I left university, I didn't have the people skills, I didn't have the confidence, and I just didn't have the life experience that I needed to work in film. So I've covered how I managed to get people skills, and I guess confidence came along the way from being exposed to more situations where I had to speak in public, I had to speak to strangers, and eventually the nerves settled and I came to realize that it's a perfectly normal thing, everybody does it. But with life experience, I've always felt like I went to university far too young. Now, there was nothing at the time that indicated this. It's totally normal for 18-year-olds to go off to uni. But I graduated at 21 and I didn't have anything to say. And I really feel like when you're working in the arts, you're giving a piece of yourself to each film you make, whether it is a silly movie about, I don't know, talking butts, or whether it is like a hard-hitting drama, self-confessional, or, you know, you and your grandparents explore your thoughts on death. No matter what it is you're making, you're putting a bit of yourself into it, and I do feel that the more life experience I got, the better I was able to put myself into each film. I was able to communicate through the medium how I wanted the audience to feel. And it's something I still need to work on and I get better at every time I make a film. But certainly at that point, I look at the work I made and I realize that there was no message coming across and there was no real feeling of me having put how I felt about life so far into that film. So I also want to say that it is totally okay if you take a pause, if you decide after uni that actually you'd really like to go traveling, or you just want to work for a little while and then see what happens next. Those are good options as well, because what you'll gain from doing that instead is still super valuable to when you want to go into your film career. So after being at the cinema for a while, I got a job in marketing and I managed to save up a lot of money. I then took a leap of faith and went freelance. And I just told people, I'm an editor. And it worked. Everyone believed me. I did have experience. I had done so many things and learned about editing. And I still had a little bit to go, but by telling people that that's what I wanted to do, I was able to actually get into that space and the opportunities opened up more and more. I also started animating, and because both of those skills are in post-production, they went hand in hand really well. I ended up kind of specializing in doing documentaries with animation, and I'm so proud of the things that I've worked on. Like, they're some of my favorite things that I've done. And I do think that all of the experiences that I had in the lead up to taking that leap of faith and going freelance, and even where I'm at now, the fact that I do have this consistent day job in editing, which is almost unheard of, and that I have started my own channel and it's going so well, I attribute to everything that's happened along the way. Hell, I wouldn't be here giving this advice had I not lived through all of that. So I do think that any experience that you can get is going to help find your way in the film industry. So I hope you found this helpful, and I'd really appreciate it if you could share the video with other people that you think might find it useful, and if you can continue to support Cinora. Now, making it to the end of this video is already support in itself because it helps the channel grow. But we do have some super cool merch that maybe you'd want to buy for someone as a Christmas present. We've got a groovy tote bag, we've got pin badges, and we've got stickers. Or you can donate to Cinora if you want to. It's my dream to work on this full time, and I really want to establish a fund that filmmakers can apply to in order to get their short films made. So I'd really appreciate it if you can help Cinora, but I so appreciate you watching this video today.